The observation deck of Station Harmony buzzed with quiet conversation as various species went about their daily routines. Commander Yeltris, a Vraxian with silver scales and 3 eyes, stood with his arms crossed, watching the security feed with growing concern. On the screen, 4 young Kraven predators moved through the human residential section, their clawed feet clicking against the metal floor. "They're heading toward apartment 7B again," noted Security Officer Theln, her antennae twitching nervously. "Should we intervene?" Yeltris shook his head slowly. The human requested no interference. She said, and I quote, "Let them learn. I still don't understand what she means." The Kraven cubs were infamous throughout the station. Standing nearly 6 feet tall even in their youth, with razor-sharp teeth, retractable claws, and hunting instincts honed over millions of years of evolution, they represented everything the galaxy feared about predator species. Their parents were diplomats, trying desperately to prove that Kraven could integrate into galactic society. The cubs, however, had other ideas. They had terrorized 3 different species in the past week alone. A Planari merchant had fainted when one cub playfully stalked him through the market. 2 Sefton engineers refused to leave their quarters after the cubs had practiced hunting near the engineering bay. Even the station's security team gave them a wide berth. Then there was Sarah Chen, the human who had arrived 3 months ago. She was small by galactic standards, barely 5.5 feet tall, with dark hair tied in a practical ponytail and an expression that never seemed fazed by anything. She worked in xenobiology research and lived alone in a modest apartment filled with plants and books. The cubs had targeted her immediately. Humans were new to the galactic community, and their predator status was still debated in council chambers. The Kraven cubs saw her as either prey or competition. Either way, they intended to establish dominance. Their first encounter had been in the station's central garden. The cubs had surrounded Sarah while she watered her tomato plants, growling low in their throats, expecting her to run or call for help. Instead, she had looked up at them, smiled, and said, "Oh, good. I need help carrying these soil bags. You 4 look strong." Before they knew what was happening, each cub was hauling a 20-pound bag of potting soil back to her apartment. When they dropped the bags and tried to look threatening again, Sarah had already disappeared inside, calling out, "Thanks so much. Come by Thursday. I'm making cookies." The cubs had left, confused, but somehow feeling like they had lost an encounter they didn't know they were in. Thursday came, and despite their pride, the smell of fresh-baked chocolate chip cookies drew them back. Sarah answered the door in an apron covered in flour, welcomed them in without fear, and handed each of them a plate of warm cookies and cold milk. The cubs, who had never experienced such casual kindness from a non-Kraven, sat awkwardly in her living room, trying to figure out if this was some kind of trick. "So," Sarah had said, sitting cross-legged on her couch, "I heard you 4 have been scaring people around the station. Want to tell me why?" The eldest cub, Rexar, had bristled. "We are Kraven. We are predators. Others should fear us." "That's dumb," Sarah replied, taking a bite of her own cookie. "Fear doesn't make you strong. It just makes you lonely." The cubs had no response to that. They finished their cookies in silence and left, even more confused than before. But they kept coming back. At first, they told themselves it was to intimidate her, to make her show fear. But Sarah never did. She treated them like neighborhood kids, which in a way they were. She asked about their studies, their families, their interests. She showed them her plants and explained photosynthesis. She let them try earth foods and didn't laugh when they couldn't handle spicy curry. Then came today. Sarah had bumped into them in the corridor, her arms full of laundry baskets. "Perfect timing. I could use some help. My washing machine finally finished, and I need to fold everything." The cubs had exchanged glances. Folding? What was folding? "It's easy," Sarah assured them, leading them into her apartment where a massive pile of clean clothes sat on her bed. You just take each piece and make it neat and flat so it fits in the drawer. Here, I'll show you. She demonstrated with a towel, folding it into a perfect rectangle. See? Now you try. Rexar picked up a shirt with his clawed hands. The fabric bunched awkwardly. He tried to flatten it, but his claws kept catching on the material. He pulled and the shirt stretched. He growled in frustration. "Gently," Sarah said. "You've got precision. You're hunters. Use that control." The cubs attacked the laundry pile with the same intensity they brought to everything. Except laundry was not prey. Laundry did not follow the rules of hunting. Shirts twisted into bizarre shapes. Socks disappeared into pant legs. Towels became unidentifiable lumps. The youngest cub, Kriya, tried folding a bedsheet. It was going well until she got tangled in it and tumbled backward, knocking into Zeth, who was wrestling with a pair of jeans. Zeth stumbled into the pile of folded items, sending them flying across the room. Rexar, attempting to catch a falling towel, instead shredded it with his claws. Within minutes, Sarah's organized laundry had transformed into absolute chaos. Clothes hung from her lamp. Socks littered the floor like fallen soldiers. The bedsheet had somehow ended up wrapped around Kriya like a toga, and in the center of it all, a mountain of misfolded, twisted, and mangled fabric rose toward the ceiling. The cubs stood frozen, staring at the disaster they had created. This was worse than the time they had accidentally released all the specimens in the biology lab. This was worse than when they had broken the station's artificial gravity in Section C. They waited for Sarah to yell, to ban them from her apartment, to report them to station security. Instead, she started laughing. It wasn't a mocking laugh. It was genuine, full-bodied laughter that made her double over, tears streaming down her face. "Oh my God," she gasped between giggles. "That's the most spectacular laundry failure I've ever seen." "How did you even get that bra stuck to the ceiling?" The cubs looked up. Sure enough, one of Sarah's undergarments dangled from the light fixture. I don't know," Rexar admitted, his intimidating predator voice reduced to a confused mumble. Sarah wiped her eyes, still grinning. "Okay, new plan. We do this together, step by step. And maybe we start with socks instead of sheets." She sat on the floor and patted the space around her. Hesitantly, the cubs joined her, their massive forms crowding into the small space. Sarah picked up 2 socks and showed them slowly how to match them and fold them together. Kriya tried next, her claws carefully pinching the fabric. It took her 3 tries, but eventually she created a passable sock bundle. Her face lit up with pride. "See? You're getting it," Sarah encouraged. For the next 2 hours, the 5 of them sat together, folding laundry. Sarah told them stories about Earth, about how human children learned chores, about how failure was just part of learning anything new. The cubs, in turn, shared stories about Kraven coming-of-age rituals, about the pressure they felt to be fierce and strong all the time. "It's exhausting," Zeth admitted quietly. "Always having to be the scariest thing in the room." "You don't have to be scary to be strong," Sarah said gently. "Some of the strongest people I know are kind, patient, gentle. Strength isn't about making others afraid. It's about knowing who you are and not being afraid to be that person even when it's hard." By the time they finished, the clothes were folded, mostly correctly, and the apartment was back in order. The cubs stood to leave, and for the first time since arriving at the station, they didn't try to look intimidating. "Sarah?" Rexar said at the door. "Thank you for not giving up on us." She smiled. "I'm human. We don't give up on people. It's kind of our thing." After they left, Sarah returned to her living room and noticed something on her table. The cubs had left behind a small carved stone, a traditional Kraven gift of respect and friendship. She picked it up, turning it over in her hands, and smiled. On the observation deck, Commander Yeltris watched the cubs walk through the corridor, their posture different, less aggressive. What did she do? He wondered aloud. She treated them like people instead of threats, Officer Thelen observed. Novel approach. Word spread quickly through the station about the laundry incident. The story got embellished with each telling until people were saying the Cubs had created a clothes tornado. But the truth was simpler and somehow more profound. The next week, other residents reported seeing the Cubs helping a Greenwich elder carry groceries. They assisted in repairing a broken door panel in the merchant sector. When a young Plenari child got lost, it was Kriya who gently helped him find his parents. The Cubs still visited Sarah regularly. She taught them to cook, to garden, to do crossword puzzles. In return, they taught her Kraven meditation techniques and how to navigate by starlight. They became an unlikely family in the cold metal corridors of Station Harmony. Months later, when a delegation of Craven officials arrived to evaluate their diplomat's progress, they were shocked to find the Cubs volunteering at the station's daycare center, 4 terrifying predators surrounded by giggling alien children who showed no fear whatsoever. How? The delegation leader demanded of Sarah, who was dropping off supplies. She shrugged. I gave them laundry to fold. They made a mountain of clothes and we cleaned it up together. Everything else just followed. The official stared at her, baffled. That makes no sense. Doesn't have to, Sarah replied. Sometimes the biggest changes start with the smallest moments. Sometimes predators just need someone to see past the claws and teeth to the scared kids underneath. The story of the predator cubs and the clothes mountain became something of a legend on Station Harmony. It was told in bars, in council meetings, in schools. Not because of the chaos or the comedy, but because it represented something important, a truth that the galaxy was slowly learning. Humans, for all their strange customs and confusing philosophies, had a gift for seeing potential where others saw only danger. They had a stubborn insistence on kindness, even when it seemed illogical. They folded laundry with predator cubs and somehow made the galaxy a little bit safer, a little bit kinder in the process. And in her small apartment, surrounded by plants and books and a carved Kraven stone, Sarah Chen smiled and started another load of laundry. She had a feeling the Cubs would be by Thursday. They usually were. This time, she thought, maybe they'd try ironing, though knowing them, they would probably set something on fire. That was okay. They would figure it out together, one small disaster at a time until those disasters became victories. That was how humans did things. That was how they built bridges between species. One folded shirt, one shared cookie, one act of stubborn, irrational kindness at a time. In the vast complexity of galactic politics and interspecies relations, sometimes the most profound changes came not from treaties or trade agreements, but from simple moments of connection, from seeing someone not as they appeared, but as they could become. The predator cubs had tried folding laundry and created a clothes mountain. But in doing so, they had learned something far more valuable than domestic skills. They had learned that strength could be gentle, that power could be kind, and that sometimes the scariest thing in the universe was opening yourself up to caring about others. And Sarah had learned that the rest of the galaxy might not understand humans yet, but they would. One clothes mountain at a time.